0 means the remainder of x divided by 2 is 0, which is just a fancy and long and cumbersome way to say that x is even. Right? Okay? All right. So we can apply the same rationale here and say that at this point here, x equals 31 or x is 28. That's not true. That is not true because this branch, I'll only take this branch if the condition is false, right? If the condition is false, it means x has to be odd, okay? Because when it's true, it is even. When it is false, it is odd. So that means, at this point, you don't have to use mathematical reasoning. You just have to reason it out in your brain, and then you just write it down and say, on this side, x cannot be 28, because if x were 28, I would have gone for the other branch. Okay? However, over here, you can still say that x equals 31 or x equals 28 at this point, because as we swim upstream a little bit more, then we can see that, one of the possibility is actually not a possibility. But at this point, we don't know. Okay, if I know after the statement here, x gets x plus 1, x can be 31 or x can be 28, what can I state over here?
X equals 30.
X equals 30 or x equals 27. Very good. However, because of the conditional statement, one of these is not possible. Which one is not possible?
27.
X is 27 is not possible because to take this branch, x has to be even. Okay, and 27 is not even. Okay. Well, we still have some pretty good results here because at this point I know x is 30. At this point I know x is 31. So if I merge these two paths up here, I know what? X is either 30 or x is 31. That's my precondition. I have just finished one half of the answer of this question because this is just saying what is the precondition. Now I have to go forward again to show that at the very end, if you use all the pre and post condition thing, the substitution and all that stuff, by the time you get back to line 37, you will end up with exactly post 37 is x equals 28. Okay? Are you guys kind of getting the idea of what to do with this type of question? Okay. When you're working on a question like this, you'll be typing using the built-in HTML editor, which means you can use all the fancy symbols and whatnot. I wouldn't spend any time to figure out how to do that. So as you type your answer, okay, going backwards. Now, if you want to be fancy, you can also use all these other type of stuff. Use a heading to mark this is before, this is going backwards, the other way is going forward and stuff like that. But you can also, in this case, use save without submitting to save the partial answer. Okay, it's easy. There's nothing to upload. You just click save without submitting, and this way I can switch to question number 4, try to answer that question. If I go back to question number 3, it is going back to what I had before I switched to the other question. Okay. So that means if you're switching between the questions, you don't really have to click Save without submitting because it is automatically done. Okay. Any questions about the test interface itself? Okay. Any questions about the question itself, the answer to this question, using the conditional statements and going back first and then go forward again? No questions? Okay, all right. Okay, so what we'll do next is to look at, let's see, which one would be a good one. Let's go to question number 5 first. I want to see if I have talked about this one in this class already, because I might have done it already. Have we done this one? This is a subroutine with both passing by value and passing by reference. No? I think we have done this one. Yeah, this is the same one that I did before to illustrate, how the invocation of one subroutine with using exactly the same parameter can come back with a different return value. Okay, so we have done this one. So that means there's no need to talk about this one because we already have the solution of this one. So we can now take a look at number 4. And number 4 looks like this. Okay, this one involves an array. Have we talked about how to pass an array by reference in this class? Nope. Okay, that makes it worthwhile to talk about it now, because we will have passing an array by reference in the final exam. Records won't be in the final exam because I felt we did not actually have enough time to cover records properly, so there won't be any questions about records, but arrays are covered. So once again, make sure you save the file to a location that you can remember. If you have a thumb drive, save it to your thumb drive. That's really the best place you can save your file. And I forgot to append the time, because if I want to save this again or work on the same question again, I want to be able to quickly tell which version am I talking about. Okay, so here's the code, and this one looks really long, but it really is not that difficult. This one, it does not have recursion in it. We'll go ahead and trace this code in sheet 2. In a question like this, on sheet 2 is already somewhat pre-done because I have to give you an array in order to process. So in this case, sheet 2 already has a precondition already written. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one. Okay. The first line, the only line that is outside of the definition of a subroutine is line 15, so we start execution on line 15. Line 15 is printing the result or the return value of the invocation of S4, so that means I have to set up, in this case, return info, because I have to go back to line 15 again. I also need one column per parameter and local variable. I have 3 of those things. I have A, which is passed by reference. I have I, which is passed by value. I have X, which is a local variable. The local variable is easy because it is always just unknown when you allocate a column for it. I is passed by value, which means it just has the value that we specify in the invoke statement, which is also easy. A is the one that is somewhat kind of strange because we know how to pass by reference an integer. In this case, I'm passing an entire array by reference. So how should I write it? Well, instead of being a reference to a single column, it is now a reference to a bunch of columns. That's basically how, in this class, how we represent passing by reference with an array. So in this case, we'll just say that A as a parameter is an alias of columns, not just a single column, but the columns C to G. That's the only thing that is different from passing by reference a single column, is that we have to say it's a reference of multiple columns. Yep.
Is there any way we could confuse C-G to C-G or something like that?
No, if you write it like this, I know it is 2. You can also spell it out, just column C to G, or you can use the Excel notation, which is a colon. C colon G indicates a range. Yep.
Were the numbers for B were they already given to us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Well, in this program, it has to be given because I am processing existing values in B. But in the exam, I might have a question change so that it initializes the values of the array. So in that case, it will all be question marks. But I do have to tell you at least how many elements are in the array. So they will still be allocated, but the values may be just question marks.
Okay.
It depends on the nature of the question. Okay. And return info is basically the same thing. When we are done with this invocation, we go back to line 15, and when we get back there, we just have the printing part to be done. Okay. So are there any questions about how I set up column H to column K for the invocation? Okay. So the rest of this subroutine is, yep, go ahead.
I just have a question on the array B.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't have to be defined anywhere in the code?
No, it does not, because it's a global variable. So it doesn't have to be referred to. Well, in this class, it doesn't have to be. It's actually referred to here, so we know that B has to exist somewhere. But the initialization is done somewhere else, so that's why by the time you get the code, it's already initialized. Because I don't want to waste a bunch of lines just to do the initializations. Okay, so getting into the subroutine, we start with line 5. Line 5 copies I to x. Okay, I has a value of 2. Now x also has a value of 2. We go to line 6, adding 1 to I goes from 2 to 3. We go to line 7. Line 7 is evaluating the condition. Let me just kind of shrink this. It's just kind of bothersome. Okay, we evaluate the comparison. I is less than bar A bar. Remember, A is an alias of column C to column G. From column C to column G, how many elements are we talking about? 5. So bar A bar is actually just 5. I has a value of 3. 3 is less than 5 is true. Very good. Then we go to line 8. Line 8 has to evaluate A bracket I is greater than A bracket X. Is that true or is that false? What is I? I is 3 at this point. A is an alias of column C to column G. So that means when I say A, you can also understand it as array B. So we're talking about B bracket 3. Is B bracket 3 greater than B bracket 2? That's the question. Yes. The answer is yes, it is, because B bracket 3 has a value of 7, and B bracket 2 has a value of 3. Okay. So we go into the conditional statement. We go to line 9. We copy I to x again. So this time x has a value of 3. Then we get out of the conditional statement. We end up on line 11. Adding 1 to I goes from 3 to 4. Then we have to go back to the beginning because this is a pre-checking loop. We reevaluate I is less than bar A bar. Is it true or is it false? It is true, because I has a value of 4 and there are 5 elements in A, and as a result 4 is less than 5 is true. Okay. Then we go to line 8. We evaluate this condition. A bracket I is greater than A bracket X is false. It is false because A bracket I is A bracket 4. A bracket 4 is basically B bracket 4, which has a value of 1. B bracket X, which is B bracket 3, has a value of 7. 1 is greater than 7 is false. So that means this is easier to trace because we skip over line 9 and also line 10. We end up on line 11 again. Line 11 is just adding 1 to I. I goes from 4 to 5. Then we have to go back to the beginning of the pre-checking loop. I is less than bar A bar is false this time because they are both 5. I is 5, bar A bar is 5 as well. So we get out of the pre-checking loop. We go to line 13. Line 13 is just returning whatever x has. In this case, x has a value of 3, so we are returning a value of 3. We copy and paste the return info cell, change the question mark to the return value, which is x, which also has a value of 3, and we're done with line 13. We go to line 14. At the end of a subroutine, we deallocate all the columns, OEM, and then we use the return info cell to tell us where to go back to. We return to line 15 to finish the print statement. We're printing a value of 3 here, and there are no more lines to trace. Is that okay? I mean, the extension of the idea of passing by reference, applied to arrays. Is that okay with you guys? Instead of referring to one column, we're just now referring to multiple columns. Any questions about this? Okay, so once again, when I'm done with this answer here, I would close the application first, okay, just to make sure that it forces me to remember to save the file, okay, because when you close the application, it will ask you, do you want to save? And typically you do, unless you have made some changes that you do not want to save. Then I will go ahead and go to here and upload the file. And you kind of have to remember which question has which file. I think what I'll do is I'll just put the name also in the question itself, so that way you look at the question, you know what file name is associated with that question. That makes it a little bit easier.